Okay, morning everyone. I'm David Coomes, and I'm just going to do a very brief introduction to Alan Chan, who's going to give this webinar. It's really super to have the opportunity to speak today about the LiDAR processing tools which we've developed in the Centre for Landscape Regeneration, which is a NERC-funded program to do with nature-based solutions in the UK. And so we've had the good fortune of having a large LiDAR survey done 2.5 years ago in Cairngorms National Park, and we've been developing tools ever since. And so this is a great opportunity to share with you what we've done, with a view to hopefully having some of those pipelines integrated uh, into the outputs of the Scottish National LiDAR scan. That would be wonderful for us as a program. So I'm going to hand over to Alan. Alan is a postdoc in the centre, and he's very kindly offered to do this, although some of the early work was also done by another postdoc called Will Flynn, and so he'll probably mention Will at various times. So I'm going to hand over to Alan with great thanks.
Thank you, David. Um, Welcome to the webinar. So, today, as David mentioned, I'm just going to go really quickly over just sort of the report that we've produced that summarizes the CLR pipelines that we've developed over the years. So, just a bit of background context, because I think we've advertised this a bit more widely, so I don't know if everyone is involved in RESAS or not, but basically the Scottish government has decided to commission this amazing national LiDAR scan across the entire country recently. And the project is in the phase of where we're deciding on what's the best ways to process this data set, how best collect this data set, how to best process this data set, and what are the potential, downstream applications that we could explore into. The RESAS commissioned, four research project lots that covers things like geomorphology, things like peat erosion, peat condition, that sort of stuff. Forestry, quantifying how much carbon stocks there are in Scotland, what is the carbon sequestration potential look like in the future, and like, for instance, mapping young trees. There's another project lot on agriculture, things like quantifying agricultural runoff or quantifying how the impacts of deer or sheep grazing might manifest over a landscape and vegetation. And there's also one project lot on resilience index, which is about like environmental risks, looking at disturbances and how changes in climate, changes in the environments more widely might affect the stability of ecosystems across Scotland. So we just thought it would be a good opportunity because we've been working on this landscape for 3 years now, based on LiDAR scan we collected in 2023. So most of these results haven't been published yet, but it's on the way to getting published. So we've just submitted a few manuscripts out. But we thought because we are in this planning process, it might be good to just collate all of this early results into one report and one presentation to see whether it fits into some of the objectives. It's not going to solve all the problems, but it might solve some problems that we are facing in environmental monitoring related to LiDAR. So the structure of this talk, I'm firstly gonna give a brief introduction to the data set that we've been using, the Cairngorms data set, the LiDAR collection, and all the remote sensing data that's associated with it. And then we're going to talk about some of the main pipelines that we've developed. This includes how to create shrub height models, includes one pipeline that we're implementing for young tree detection and segmentation. It doesn't only detect young trees, but it's geared towards being particularly sensitive towards young trees. I'm going to touch on deadwood creation, and we're going to mention other workflows as well, including structural metrics and foundation models. David, do you want to talk about foundation models first before you run off?
Yes, just to apologise to everybody that I've been dragged into doing interviews all morning, so I've just missed one person. But I need to be back there at 11:40. But I think maybe, Alan, we take the risk that you're going to go at sufficient speed that I can do the do the
Oh,
foundation models
that's
later.
going to be risky. Okay, anyway. Yeah, sure, sure, sure. Okay, so I'll give an introduction to the Cairngorms data set first. So essentially, uh, we this Cairngorms CLR LiDAR scan occurred in the Cairngorms Connect region, and this is sort of an amazing project inside the Cairngorms National Park, where four of the major land managers, Wildlands, Nature Scott, RSPB, and FLS sort of banded together in like a 200-year vision to restore this landscape using natural processes. So they sort of controlled deer numbers to see how that could promote a forest expansion and restore the landscape that way. And so the landscape changed a lot over the past, 10, 20 years. So we thought it might be quite interesting from a scientific point of view to collect a LiDAR data scan for this landscape. So in 2023, in the summer of 2023, when it's really sunny and dry, we commissioned the CLR commissioned a LiDAR scan across 569 square kilometers in this area that covers mainly the lowlands, but a bit of the mountains as well. And it has a point density of 20 to 22 points per meter squared on average. So I think it's slightly higher than what is proposed for the national LiDAR scan. So the thing to mention here is that we've collected a big bunch of, sorry. Yes.
Right, what key deliverables for us to focus on. But I have to say, health warning, they're not all the key deliverables that we need to deliver as a team. They're just the ones.
Sorry, just hearing some noises there. Yeah, the thing to mention is that we've collected a big bunch of different remote sensing products from it. This includes things like standard LiDAR metrics from like DTM, CHM, slopes, vertical complexity index, and that sort of stuff. We also have like an orthophoto data set, which is of incredible resolution, 0.1 meter, so 10 centimeter resolution across the landscape that's been collected. And a lot of field work has been done there, vegetation surveys, shrub height measurements, and precise locations of individual trees. We did use GPS to measure some of that, and Will created a database with measured deadwood and TLS scans and that sort of stuff. So all of this data is currently sitting in the computers in the CLR, and they're cataloged. I have a big spreadsheet of like links to download these data sets. So if anyone is interested in using these data sets for calibration or validation purposes, or just to compare it with LiDAR products that are derived from the national LiDAR scan or other LiDAR scans, do reach out, because it's now just sitting there. So we're more than happy to think about collaborations and data sharing to facilitate whatever happens in the next few months. So on the shrub height modeling, um, yeah, I'm going to move on to the next thing, which is one of the main pipelines that we've developed in the CLR, which is to model, shrub heights across the landscape. Um, so this sort of stems from the fact that we observed that conventional canopy height models, or the conventional pipelines, doesn't seem to be very good at mapping near ground features, things like heather, bracken, or deadwood. So when we get a LiDAR dataset, the conventional standard protocol is to create like a digital terrain model and triangulate the points to create a digital terrain model, subtract that from the LiDAR point cloud, normalize the point clouds, and then you could get a canopy height model that shows like the height of trees and where the trees are, etc. So this pipeline is really good at looking at big stuff. But when we're talking about near ground features, they're often occluded by the canopy. So if we only sort of look at the surface of the vegetation, we'll be looking at the big trees, but not what's sitting underneath it. But secondly, we found that even if we, remove the trees from the point cloud, um, the CHM algorithm still sort of struggles to recreate these near ground features. And the reason behind that is because of the very poor vertical separation in this layer. So, a heather bush might be 10 centimeters, 20 centimeters, 30 centimeters tall. That vertical contrast between 0 and 20 is just not large enough. So you end up using these algorithms to misclassify a lot of these shrub returns as ground points and basically normalizing and erasing a lot of the shrubs. So even if you adjust different parameters in these algorithms, it's not easy. It's basically very difficult for you to get a good height model for these near ground features. So you can see on the panel on the right, this is simple tree removal. So I just removed all the trees and put the data, the LiDAR point clouds into a standard CHM processing algorithm. And we adjust all parameters, optimized all parameters, but still, you can see that it's not really showing the bracken patch. It's not really showing lying deadwood. It's not really showing the variation of shrub heights across the landscape. So over the past 3 years, I've been playing around with different ways to, process the LiDAR point clouds to solve this issue. And I'm not going to go into the details of the algorithm, but the main idea is that we thought that if the reason these CHM algorithms are not accurately capturing shrub heights is because of the lack of vertical separation, and that they're designed for trees, then maybe we could solve this problem by artificially stretching the point cloud such that the shrubs resemble trees in terms of dimensions. So apparently this sort of solves this issue. So if we just extract the point returns from the shrub layer and artificially stretch them 10 times, 20 times, such that it becomes like big objects, and together with other bits in the pipeline, we were actually able to create something that is much more realistic in reflecting near ground features like heather, bracken, or deadwood. So here's like a comparison. The middle panel is the panel that you've just seen. It's the product of the canopy height model, and on the right you could see the shrub height model that is created by stretching the point cloud before doing all the ground point detection and normalization. So you could see that a lot of the vegetation features that are previously very difficult to see, like bracken or lying deadwood or the track, it's now showing up on the map. So we've also validated this with a bunch of shrub height measurements. So we do have to thank the RSPB for providing some of the data set for this. And we also did our own surveys, just took a ruler, a tape measure out and just measured like thousands and thousands of shrub heights at different points. And what we found is that after using this method to stretch the point cloud and estimate shrub heights, the shrub heights estimated seem to match with field measured shrub heights much better than before. And encouragingly, this also covers different habitats as well. So it's not only the open habitats, the heathlands, where we could match the shrub heights, but you could see that even in understory, so like planted pine woods or old growth pine woods, it still all falls on the same line. So it still estimates the shrub heights of these habitats quite clearly. And it also sort of works in places where shrub heights are really, really short, like in alpine shrublands, it was still able to sort of tell between the patches that are very short with the patches that are short. So we then applied, this pipeline to the entire Cairngorms Connect landscape, to the entire like 569 square kilometers of land, and we just scrolled around, and we see that this shrub height model seems to be recreating a lot of these small near ground features quite vividly. So Examples here include things like deadwood. So you can see lying logs on the floor and deadwood here. And in the middle panel, it's a plantation, and you could see that the shrub height model revealed a lot of the lines created by tractors in the shrub layer, and it also recreated this bracken patch in this open area right here. And on the right is a demonstration of how that could actually reveal some patterns that you can't see underground. So this is a rig and furrow system in the Cairngorms Connect landscape that would be otherwise quite difficult to study because underground you can't really see this very clearly. And even in things like an aerial image, you can't really see these small features very clearly. But with the shrub height model, you're suddenly able to find these areas where the past land use have left a mark on the landscape. So if you're interested in any of these small features, things like ditches, things like shrub structure, things like deadwood, I think this is one data set that is might be worth exploring. And so recently we've just tried taking, so this results are very preliminary. I just created this like a day or two ago, but we are trying to apply the shrub height model to different use cases, and the preliminary results are quite encouraging in a sense. So this is one little study I did on trying to use shrub height models and structural metrics derived from the shrub height models in species distribution modeling of plants. So I did a bunch of vegetation surveys across the landscape and estimated, the percentage coverage of common plant species and groups of plants across the landscape. This is things like heather, blaeberry, or grasses. And I built like a random forest model to predict from different sets of topographic variables and LiDAR variables, the percentage coverage of these shrubs. And as it turns out, including the shrub height model and structural metrics derived from it, significantly improved the performance of these species distribution model. So I think the mean R square improvement is around 22%. And this is before we ran any sophisticated models on the structure, so on the patterns. So I didn't include any like deep learning models. I'm just putting in shrub height and like maybe the standard deviation of shrub height and some simple structural metrics. And already we're seeing quite a bit of improvement. Another area where we are exploring the applications of shrub height is fire risk mapping. So this is in collaboration with Clara Belcher and Ben Philipson in the University of Exeter. So what they've done is that they've developed a bunch of field models for different scenarios across the UK landscape. So they have field models that link together the type of field, so grasses, heather, a mixture between grass and heather, and the field height with things like fire risk, flame length, and other measures of fire properties. So what they do not have is a wall-to-wall understanding of like a continuous map of shrub height distribution. So we sort of sent them the shrub height model dataset, and then they sort of incorporated this into fire risk mapping to select the correct field model for that parcel of land. And the result looks something like this. So we could now use these shrub height models alongside other field models to create a fire risk map across the landscape and estimate, say, the flame length across different patches of vegetation. And the bit of red here is basically those places where the estimated flame length is going to be high for conventional fire tackling techniques as set out by the Scottish government. So I'm just going to pause a little bit and do a very quick demonstration of the lidarSHM package, which we've written up this algorithm of creating shrub height models using LiDAR dataset, and we uploaded it into a GitHub repository that is hopefully easier to use. And I'm just going to give a quick demonstration of how anyone could, with a LiDAR dataset, could create these models. So could you see my screen right now?
Yes,
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
see your.
Okay. Right. Thanks. So just imagine that we have like a point cloud, a LiDAR point cloud, that shows some, regenerating trees and some shrubs. So this is just a tile I've picked out from the Cairngorms Connect dataset. So you can see there are some trees on top of the landscape, and then there's a shrub layer that goes with it. So what we could do is we could just use the LiDAR package in R to load this point cloud into R, and we could very quickly create things like digital terrain models using the LiDAR package. And we just save this digital terrain model. Um, and then, yeah, and we could then load the LiDAR SHM package by installing it through GitHub. We could move this repository. At some point, we might move this to the central CLR or a Center for Earth Observation repository, but at the moment it's sitting in my own repository, but that's fine. You could just load it into the LiDAR SHM package into the computer, and you could just specify a bunch of parameters. So these are like default parameters, optimized parameters we found from my study in the Cairngorms, but you could also adjust to like how much you stretch the shrubs, how tall you think the shrubs are, and the resolution of the DTM used to normalize the data set, etc. But the point is that it's now one easy function where you could just specify the last file, the raw point cloud, and a digital terrain model created by standard processes, and it'll do all the normalization, stretching, reclassification of ground points, and everything automatically within that function. And yeah, it takes a few seconds to run, because it's reclassified. The main point is to reclassify the ground points. That's going to take a while. Yeah. So after that, you would very quickly get a nice shrub height model of the landscape. So the white bits are the trees where the LiDAR point cloud is occluded, and there aren't enough points to look at the shrub heights underneath. But you could see like a distribution of shrub heights across the landscape immediately, and we could just save that data set. And yeah, so I'm just trying to hopefully make this easier for everyone to use. So if you have like LiDAR point clouds that you want to test on, you could just install the package and run it in a single step, basically, to see how it performs. Um, right. So then I'm going to talk about the second pipeline that we've sort of developed. Uh, in the CLR, which is the work by our master student, Sudhima Thapa, uh, and we sort of developed a young tree detection and segmentation algorithm, which is also packaged into an R package that we've uploaded to as a repository for everyone to download. So I think the rationale for doing this is that we've observed that a lot of the algorithms used to detect and segment trees are sort of geared towards larger trees, bigger objects. But land managers often need to know uh, be able to estimate the number of regenerating trees across the landscape, including trees that are much smaller. So this is for different purposes. Firstly, because like a lot of programs and projects nowadays are focused on natural regeneration instead of tree planting. So there's like more uncertainty about whether or not, the trees are gonna successfully recolonize the landscape or not. So with tree planting, you have a bit more certainty about the trees, but with natural regeneration, you're depending on seed sources. So it might or might not colonize a landscape that you think it would. So we LiDAR sort of represents a good opportunity for us to reevaluate this to see whether we have more effective approaches to detect these young trees across a landscape scale, and on a very practical perspective, determine whether woodland creation is successful for something like grant application for woodland creation. So these are very practical tasks that land managers have to do nowadays with field work usually that might potentially be replaced by the LiDAR scan. So the same with so we are facing the same problem as the shrub height model. So we have big trees which are easier to detect, but then we have a lot of small trees in the landscape that just barely poke above the shrub layer, which are sort of difficult to detect using conventional methods to process the point cloud. So what we did was that we sort of took the LiDAR, the shrub height models, and we sort of tweaked it such that we not only look at the shrubs, but we set a very high maximum shrub height and include also the trees into the shrub height model. And we create this sort of alternative canopy height model that includes not only the big trees, but also the estimating the heights of small trees well as well. And what we did was that we then sort of smoothed this canopy height model, and we looked at objects that are poking above the shrub layer and did a treetop detection. And we then took the treetops back to the original shrub height model and grew out the crowns. Um, and And then we sort of designed a methodology to remove things that are unrealistic, including something like the bracken layer, which are often the same height as regenerating trees. Remove things like rock, remove things like houses, fences, and other like non-circular objects from this map. And finally, we could get some sort of segmented individual tree crown segmentation of not only the big trees, but also the small regenerating small trees with associated tree height estimations with it. Um, so we applied this algorithm across the entire Cairngorms connector landscape, and we've detected 6.17 million trees in total, including 2.65 million saplings that are under 5 meters in height. So here is just like a nice little figure where we sort of compared the trees that we measured and geolocated in the field with the segmented crowns, which are the colored crowns that are detected by the LiDAR. So you can see that it matches up quite well. Of course, there will be some under segmentation when the trees are growing in a cluster very closely together. It might segment it as one crown instead of two, but overall, it is detecting some of the trees quite well. And we also tested how sensitive this algorithm is, and we found that for anything that is over, 1.5 meters in height, basically poking above the maximum heather height of the landscape, as long as it reaches that sort of height that is taller than the heather, the algorithm was able to pick it up quite effectively. So once you get to something like 1.7, 1.8 meters, um, we're detecting over 80%, over 90% of all of these tree clusters. Um, and we are also estimating the heights of these tree clusters quite quite accurately. So there is, of course, a sort of an slight underestimation of height when the LiDAR points aren't hitting the tops of the trees or the ground isn't classified very well. And also to mention is that we measured the height of these trees 1 year after the LiDAR scan had been carried out. So the trees would have grown by a little bit over this time period. But overall, you could see a quite a nice correlation between, the heights measured by uh, the LiDAR-based tree regen segmentation algorithm compared to the field measured heights on 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 the x-axis. So we then sort of took these numbers and just mapped regenerating trees across the landscape, and we actually did some comparisons with the number of hectares of land that has reached over 100 stems per hectare square that is estimated by the land managers, and we compared the land managers' numbers with our numbers, and it sort of matches up quite nicely. So we think that this could potentially, be quite a useful tool for monitoring and reporting woodland expansion and woodland creation success, and doing some sort of ecological modeling on what predicts the success of regeneration and forest creation. So here are some graphs showing like how the number of regenerating trees correlate with things like elevation, slope, and distance to forest. So you can see very clear trends of that. And it'll be quite useful for modeling carbon sequestration as well. So if you know how many young trees there are, you could predict how quickly they grow, how quickly or how much carbon it's going to sequester in the future. So again, as with the lidarSHM package, we've sort of created a nice simple R package to as a wrapper around all these algorithms that we've talked about. And I preliminarily named it as mini tree, but and I'm just going to do a very quick demonstration
Alan,
of this.
I need to go in a few minutes. So if you want me to do something onto Sarah, I can do it now. But then I have to dash. You might find that I've moved the slides, but maybe I haven't. Maybe, yeah, if you could just let me, I can spend 5 minutes on that now. Apologies to interrupting you.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Go ahead.
So, so, so you'll have to move the slides forward, I'm afraid, as we go along.
Yeah.
So this is something else we're doing in Cambridge, which is making use of the LiDAR data, and I'll explain how. And I'll just give a very brief update of this. This is meant to be at the end, but I'm afraid I've got to get back to the interview team. So thank you, Alan. Next one, please. So we've clearly got vast amounts of satellite imagery coming to us from, for example, the European Space Agency Sentinel-2 and Sentinel-1 satellites, millions and millions of tiles and petabytes of data coming in our direction. What can we do to best use that? Next one, please. One of the challenges with satellite imagery, is that each time the satellite goes over the cloud and the dust in the atmosphere is rather different, and you've got sort of changing light regimes, and that's all a bit problematic for analyzing these big data sets. Next one, please. And a common method to get around that is to create a composite over the course of a year. So you just have one nice image a year. Next one, please. But that's a shame, because what you do when you composite is lose this temporal signal. So the information about what's happening over the course of a year. And here we've got a tropical forest, and you can see that tree changing quite dramatically as it's losing leaves and producing new leaves over the course of the year. And all that information, which could be useful for classification, for example, is lost. Next one, please. And so what this geospatial foundation model is doing is a new AI approach, which is taking all that data and in a complicated way, I'm not going to even try and explain, creating what's called a representation. So for each 10 by 10 pixel of the planet, we've got 128 numbers, which are crystallizing out, summarizing all that satellite imagery from a single year into 128 numbers. And those numbers are much easier to do downstream tasks on. So you can use conventional ecological modeling tools like random forest machine learning tools in order to do things like classification. Next one, please. And there's some pretty Tessera images from different parts of the planet. Next one, please. So we're working with the Cairngorms Connect project, which is bringing down deer numbers. We're seeing deer expansion as a result, woodland expansion and heather expansion as a result of that. Next one, please. So the deer numbers were historically very high, but have been brought down. Thank you to the program for sharing these lovely photos. Next one, please. And we've got woodlands coming back across the open heathlands, and heather much more taller and more sort of vibrant than before. Next one, please. And the other thing which is happening is peatland restoration. Next one, please. And here we have Alan in a different job going up, and he managed to measure 308 vegetation plots over a couple of years, and did percentage cover of those plots. And without going into next one, please. So yeah, just carry on the animation. Without going into any detail, I'm just going to show you how this can map out at 10-meter resolution the cover of a few things. So I'm just going to show you heather, and then these bog plants, cotton grass and deer grass, and then bare peat. Next one, please. And so here's the Cairngorms National Park, and you can see the purple is the heather. Next one, please. And just zooming in, you can see this is percentage cover at 10-meter scale, and you can see Loch Morlick, where people will know from their holidays, and then the ski field. You can see you're sort of slowly petering out of heather as you go up the mountain towards the top there, which makes perfect sense. Thank you for the little arrow as well. Next one, please. And this is just showing you cotton grass and deer grass, sort of bog species, sedges. Next one, please. And what you can see is actually the distribution of those are picking up exactly where bogs are marked on the map as horizontal lines. So we can see it's working there as well. Next one, please. And this is actually picking up bare peat, which I find particularly amazing. So this is a particular piece of bog which hasn't been repaired yet, and you can see lots of bare peat on there. So it's just, this is a couple of weeks work to do this, and it's just amazing what the new technologies can help us with. Next one, please, particularly in conjunction with the LiDAR survey. Finally, Alan's already shown this nice picture of individual trees. Next one, please. And what we've been, and that the LiDAR is brilliant for measuring very accurately height and numbers and things. The question is whether these foundation models can do the same thing. And the answer is it maybe it's not doing as good a job by any means. This is LiDAR on one side and the predictions of the foundation model on the other one. But you can see there is a relationship there at 10-meter scale, which we might be able to refine. So I think in the future we'll be combining these new foundation models with the incredibly accurate provision from LiDAR data. So it's going to be a very interesting combination. I'm afraid I've really got to go. I'm now 1 minute late for my interview. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, David. Where am I? Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, thank you, David, for this incredible walking us through this incredible new foundation model data set. So I'm sort of briefly involved in that project, and the results are really, really amazing. So where was I? Yes, demonstrating the mini tree package. So as I've just mentioned before, David mentioned the foundation model stuff. We have an algorithm. We sort of designed a pipeline by piecing together existing tree segmentation and detection algorithms with in the Scottish context with the shrub height model to create this pipeline to detect trees that are both small and big. And we've written this mini tree package to help do that. So I'm just going to very quickly demonstrate how the workflow works. So the first thing to do here is if we have a LiDAR point cloud where we want to detect small trees. So I'm just using the same LiDAR point cloud as before. What we could do is we could create a canopy height model using the shrub height model algorithm. So we just reset the maximum shrub height to a very high value, so that you could capture the big trees instead of the small ones. And what you end up with is basically a shrub height model with big trees on it, that includes both the big trees and the regenerating trees, which is accurately height measured. And we could sort of have a look at this data set. And yeah, so in the previous data set, you could see a lot of these taller trees have been masked out, but here we are keeping a lot of the regenerating trees onto the shrub height model as well. And then we could pass this data set, this special canopy height model, through to the mini tree package. So again, you could install it through, install GitHub and just get the repository off GitHub. And so it's just a simple function where you pass this special regen CHM into the function, and it would automatically return a list of two objects. One is basically the shapefile for the treetops, detected treetops, including the height sort of estimates of these treetops. And the second one is basically another shapefile with the area, basically the segmented tree polygons, including the tree height and the canopy hair area again. And I've also written another function called this mini QA mask thing. So if you just run the output and put it in here, it would automatically flag whether or not we should trust these segmentations. So the problem is that like in very steep slopes, the shrub height model might not be capturing shrub height very accurately, because when you have very steep topography and if you have very sharp changes in slopes, it might mistaken the background topography as trees. So this algorithm basically just identifies these places with very steep slopes and just flag it. You then get another column on the shapefile called like whether it passes the quality assessment. So it's very, very simple to use. So you just load the point cloud in, you create a shrub height model, a canopy height model using the SHM algorithm, and you just run that output through this mini segment, and then you have a shapefile showing where all the trees are. And we could sort of visualize this in QGIS as well. So in our, you could see that these are basically just shapefiles and simple features objects. I should probably write this down. And what we then have is basically, so this is the tile that we've just been processing. So we have now a shrub height model in the background with the trees in, and we can now see segmented tree crowns with estimated height being labeled on the landscape, and you could see that it's picking up a lot of these small trees quite effectively. So that's something that if you have a LiDAR data set coming in, it might be something to play around with. And so another main pipeline that we sort of are developing. So this is in one of the earlier stages of development. So this is the project of Will Flynn, which is the other postdoc in the CLR. So he was interested in detecting deadwood from the landscape. So again, he sort of took some of the ideas I had for the shrub height model for the stretching of the point cloud, but instead of creating a shrub height model, you could then fit cylindrical mathematical models through the normalized point cloud to detect linear objects on the ground. So what he did was that he fitted these models through these deadwood patches that we already know that are like measured inside the field. And what we found that is that we could sort of estimate coarse woody debris volume through airborne laser scanning quite effectively. This is a graph showing the estimated deadwood volume from ALS in the y-axis and the estimated deadwood volume estimated by terrestrial laser scanning, so incredibly detailed on the x-axis, and you can see that it matches up quite well. So we haven't we're still developing this algorithm, so we haven't actually packaged this into a package that you could use yet, but this is very much on the pipeline, something that we would be exploring to do in the future if there's interest. Yeah. So some of the other workflows that the CLR has been involved in and that might be worth mentioning includes a pipeline that sort of just conveniently calculates structural metrics from LiDAR point clouds. I've included this into the lidarSHM package as well. So there are a few examples in the repo. Basically, it's just a wrapper function around a lot of these LiDAR metrics and CHM metrics functions. So things like gap fraction, ground fraction, normalized room pull index, a lot of these commonly used metrics. I just wrapped it around, create a wrapper for all these functions so that you could just input a LiDAR point cloud into one function and you could get a whole list of different metrics from it. So this is for LiDAR, both LiDAR and CHMs. And we are also briefly involved in a side project by our master's student Sudina, who took the segmented crowns that we found using this algorithm. And she took these crowns and looked at the different types of trees. And what she found was that the structure, the canopy structure, including things like the variation in height, or canopy area, or tree density, if you calculate all these metrics and put it through as PCA, you could actually identify or classify these tree crowns into plantations, trees and plantations, and trees in that has like old growth characteristics, or the granny trees, quite effectively. So it's like separating out the granny trees from those that are in plantation. So if you're interested in some sort of habitat mapping or looking at different forest classes, so this might be one approach to go to as well, because like we all know that like big trees, granny trees, would have special structural characteristics that is quite important for things like species distribution modeling and a lot of rare species around Scotland. So yeah, so basically that's a quick walkthrough of all the pipelines that are included in this report. So if you are interested in more details of these pipelines, the report is now been published on OpenEngage. So the link is in the invite email of this seminar. So feel free to just download it and have a read if you're interested in particular parts of this presentation. So thanks everyone for joining. And I'll just leave a few minutes for questions.
I have got a question, but I don't know how to raise my hand in this application. So
Yeah.
if that is okay.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah. No, I was wondering whether it's possible to use the intensity values that are coming with the point clouds as a way of improving the classification, and also whether RGB plus near infrared or multispectral data might give you a much better or more straightforward system for the classification of species groups.
Yeah, those are both really good questions. So I'm gonna answer the second question first. So yes, I think RGB or spectral optical sensors could be really useful in mapping percentage coverage. And I think the best way to do it now is just to use the Tessera foundation model for it, because like it also encompasses the temporal information as well. So like, heather would be purple over the summer, and Tessera sort of captures that. So it creates very good classification accuracy of percentage coverage. But what that cannot really do is to map out percentage coverage or species composition in the understory. So if you have like a plantation and you want to know like what's sitting under the plantation, is it tall shrubs or is it short shrubs? Is it heather or is it blaeberry? And in the Cairngorms Connect, they're particularly interested in blaeberry cover, because like apparently blaeberry cover inside the forest is quite correlated with capercaillie breeding success. So for them, it's quite important to understand that. So for that, it might be good to combine the LiDAR structural estimates with the foundation models in terms of habitat mapping or species distribution modeling. So I think there's a lot of opportunities to do some sort of data fusion approach here. So it might be that you do a classification of habitat classification or species percentage coverage estimation from the optical data, but then use the LiDAR data set to look at shrub heights and further classify it into like, is it tall heather, short heather? What's the structure of it? Because it quite affects things. And for the first question, is LiDAR intensity useful? So I'm actually really interested in that. So I had a look at the LiDAR intensity data in this data set, and what I found was that it highlights grasslands really nicely. So I think grasslands have quite a high LiDAR intensity compared to other stuff. I haven't actually included that into any sort of classification, but it could be explored. I think it's
But
something
I
that
mean,
we could do.
if you're classifying trees, individual trees or saplings, you might have a lower intensity values because energy is absorbed more efficiently by these structures than in grassland. You're right. I mean, there would be very bright signals. The problem
Yeah.
is also dependent. Intensity is also dependent on the scanning angle. So
Hmm. Yeah. This is one of the tricky parts, because I did observe that in the intensity you could see the flight lines quite clearly. That's because of the scanning angle. So we do have to correct for that. But
yeah,
I don't know. Intensity is quite good for grasslands. It has higher intensity for grassland than rocks, which I find it interesting. But like anyway,
yeah.
so it just lights
Okay.
up. Yeah. Anyway, uh, Clive.
Well,
Yeah.
Thanks, Alan. That was a super overview. And just on that last point, actually, Alan Zuter at the Hutton Institute had a wee seminar back in January looking at using intensity to look at issues to do with plant health in woodland and other systems as well. So it might be worth following up with him around that. I wanted to pick up the point somebody made in the chat about whether the techniques that you outlined could be used to pick up things like rhododendron under the tree canopy and distinguish that from, as it were, healthier understory that we might want to see in woodland systems.
Yeah, I think that's one of the very interesting applications. I was actually just thinking about that. So rhododendron ponticum invasions is a serious problem in a lot of the Scottish forest, and they do need a technique to monitor that. So I think rhododendron would be slightly higher than it will be taller than the heather layer or the blaeberry layer out in the forest. So I reckon you might be able to just raise the threshold of the shrub height. So in the shrub height model function, uh, there's sort of an argument of maximum shrub height. So here I'm removing anything that is above 1.25 meters. Essentially, I'm just removing all the trees and just looking at the very small dwarf shrubs. But in reality, if we are looking at rhododendron, we might be able to just raise this slightly. So we're removing the very big trees, but we are still keeping the rhododendron in. So I think there's room for just playing around with this maximum shrub height algorithm to see whether you're capturing this height models of different layers of stuff. So yeah.
Yeah, so, and I guess if you were able to kind of combine that with some of the sort of complexity, I guess, in terms of useful understory would have a more complex structure than rhododendron. So if you couple those together, you might be able to sort of tease out the invasive species from a useful understory pattern. That'd be great.
Yeah, something to look into. I think there is also a lot of room to look at deep learning approaches. So I think in my shrub height model, I'm seeing a lot of um, you know, juniper sitting underneath the curve. So I could tell it's juniper because I look at it and I know that that's juniper. But then, like in terms of shrub height, it might be difficult to separate that between that and things like bracken. But like with some sort of deep learning algorithm, you might be able to just pick up and say that, well, the pattern, maybe using a CNN or a UNet or something, so you might be able to pick up the pattern and say this is juniper, this is rhododendron ponticum. So yeah, so I think there's room to maybe do a few studies on that. Uh, are there any questions on the chat? Wait. Okay, rhododendron ponticum, yes. Oh, there's a question about point density. How well are these models likely to work on the Scottish LiDAR dataset, given it would have less points per meter square? This is from Christina. Yes, this is an area that needs to be tested. I think one way to do this is just to downsample the point density from our data sets and just test that. I think Will did it for deadwood and find that yeah, it does become progressively more difficult to identify or get deadwood volume when you drop below 10 points per meter squared. I mean, I haven't tested the shrub height modeling. With respect to point density. So yeah, it is something to look, yeah, to investigate. I do think the what's the point density, target point density of the national LiDAR scans around 10 points, right, per meter squared. So yeah, hopefully it'll be high enough for a lot of this stuff. But yeah. Yeah, we're sort of running out of time, I think, but there's okay, one last question. Would this also work on point clouds from UAV derived data? Yes, I think it would be interesting to test this on UAV. I think UAV LiDAR would have a lower power, so it might not penetrate as deeply into, say, the shrub layer as something with higher power, but it also has a much higher point density. So yeah, I haven't tested this yet. I've also had collaborators asking me whether it will work on TLS scans because they have very high point density. You could see the shrub layer very clearly, but they don't have a good method to extract the shrubs. So yeah, a lot of things to be tested. Right, I'm afraid we are sort of running out of time. Yeah, just so do send us like emails if yeah, just drop it in an email or a message if you're interested in any of the data sets or you just want to chat about things like the shrub height model or um, like tree crown detection and all these algorithms. Right. Thanks so much for joining.